Hello, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor for me to be invited to this conference as a featured speaker. Let me tell you frankly that I would be happier to attend the conference in flesh. But the situation of the pandemic has forced to do things online, unfortunately. Ladies and gentlemen, my talk will deal with the intricacies faced by EFL teachers in most Indonesian schools during this pandemic catastrophe. My presentation will begin with some highlights on how online teaching has been conducted in Indonesian school settings. And then I'll share on how preparation for teaching is commonly carried out. Issues and strategies in classroom activities will also be conducted, and then problems in assessment will follow. Some intricacies is in all online teaching will also be shared. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know that we are in the era of Industrial Revolution 4.0, which requires literacy and digital literacy competencies. There is a strong demand for teachers and students to be technology literate and use multimedia in teaching and learning. As a matter of fact, the 2013 Indonesian school curriculum requires teachers and students to have digital literacy skills. Therefore, TPAC integration becomes very important. Since 2013 until now, our education policy has suggested the use of technology and multimedia in learning. However, efforts as long as 7 years were still insufficient to optimally encourage teachers to use technology as much as they could. But this pandemic has its own blessing. This is the enormity of COVID-19, which has immediately forced educational practices in Indonesia to switch from on-site learning to online learning, which at the same time meets the demands of Industrial Revolution 4.0. It is this compulsion that drives the educational settings from kindergarten to university levels to switch to online learning. Parents who have children in kindergarten and elementary school have been forced to be technology literate because they have to help their son and daughters in online school activities. In every activity, of course, there are challenges that we must face. In online learning, of course, there are many challenges of teachers, students, and also parents. Adequate facilities and infrastructure are needed. Location and equipment. Location that are sometimes not reached by internet signals. Maybe there are students who don't have devices such as laptops and gadgets. Maybe there are students who can't afford to buy quotas online. All education implementers and stakeholders must be technology literate, must be able to play Google Meet, Zoom, WebEx, etc. Online instruction has basically the same characteristics as online teaching and learning in the classroom. And it has to be in line with the curriculum, and it should be inclusive in the sense that it should accommodate different types of students. In selecting activities, they should be capable of engaging students with innovative approaches using effective method. When it comes to assessment, it should cover both formative and summative types. When coherent, with coherent and then consistent and transparent ways of evaluation. How can online teaching and learning be effective? Teachers must be able to make students fully involved in learning, just as it takes place in one-sided teaching and learning in the classroom. Teachers must be able to make the overall teaching and learning process run smoothly. This requires meticulous preparation on the part of the teacher, including a better and improved mastery about the technological platforms used. It is true that technologies become a very important support in online teaching. No doubt about it. When the teacher missed one point of information regarding the technology used, there is a possibility of experiencing more intricacies in his teaching process. Teachers must keep the interaction of students-teacher, students, and students' material or teaching materials running smoothly with the help of technology. How to make online teaching and learning effective? First and foremost, we need to set up good planning, which could be in the form of a lesson plan to provide us with a guide for carrying out all the teaching learning activities. Teaching learning materials should be prepared carefully before the action of teaching begins. And then all the activities should be well designed in detail. Assessment whilst teaching, well known as formative assessment, should be well prepared. For all these teachers and students must have sufficient digital literacy skills. I believe a good lesson plan could be a prerequisite for a successful online teaching and learning activities. A face-to-face class meeting lesson plan is certainly different from the online lesson plan. Online lesson plans should be more detailed than classroom lesson plans. There are some similar important things to consider in developing lesson plans for face-to-face meetings in class and online. First of all, before teaching, the teachers must first know who the students are. From different perspectives such as age, proficiency levels, cognitive characteristics, and affective characteristics, as well as learning experiences. After knowing who the students we will teach, then we determine the learning objective. We need to specify goals. Material coverage and material development need to look at students' characteristics and learning objectives. And then, especially in online learning, we must determine what platform to use. Do we want to use Google Meet with Google Classroom, Zoom, Webex, or what have you? We also need then to determine what and how to assess. And after we decide all these things, then we create a scenario or storyboard for the activity. To have all these items crystals clear in front of the teacher, we certainly need more than just one page lesson plan. We may have a one-page summary of the lesson plan, but detailed description is then needed. I have conducted an online survey on what teachers have to say regarding their online teaching activities. There were 23 teachers responded to the questionnaire for across the country, representing teachers of English in junior and senior high schools and junior lecturer of English at the tertiary institution. More than 70% of the respondents had some kind of training regarding online teaching. They used different kind of online platforms in their teaching. The majority of them use Zoom, WhatsApp, and Google Classroom. Google Meet, Telegram, Moodle, and Schoology were also used. In conducting their online teaching, they mostly did it by combining synchronous and asynchronous modes of teaching. How well prepared are the English teachers in conducting online teaching? More than 50% of them reported that they did not have sufficient time to prepare for their online teaching. The majority of them thought that lesson planning for online teaching is different from that of on-site teaching. However, when asked about teaching objectives, almost all of them said that they were basically the same as in the face-to-face teaching class. During online sessions, there were 3 types of activities. 44% of the teachers would tend to conduct individual work, while 40% of them would carry out pair work. Group work was done by only 16% of them. As regards practices in using English, almost all of the teachers did that, with only one teacher did very little of it, due to the tendency of conducting text-based teaching in this session. Online teaching creates its own problem in monitoring and assessment. During the online session, it is difficult for the teacher to monitor whether each of the students is involved in the session. There are some ways that the teacher reported to handle the issue of monitoring students. It is hard to monitor students' involvement, that's what they say. By giving questions or quizzes, keeping the camera on, watching students' facial expressions, checking students' responses to posts, seeing activities via Google Form, providing interactive activities, and filling out the attendance list. Assessment is reported as consisting of formative and summative assessment, with a combination of the two was reported to be conducted by a little more than 40% by the teachers, followed by formative assessment practiced by more than 30% of them, and summative assessment by a little over 25%. The teacher reported difficulties in assessment, especially related to making sure whether they did it by themselves. Another problem is ensuring students work honestly. The number of students is large. It is difficult to assess the authenticity of student work, difficult to carry out remedial teaching, making sure students work to their maximum capacity, and students tend to be passive in answering questions online. There are constraints and challenges reported by the teachers. Technical difficulties faced by the teachers include unusable internet connection. Camera off due to the student's difficulty. Activities hard to control. Late login by the student. Students' limited internet data quota, especially for YouTube-based assignments. Students did not own smartphones. And last but not least, teachers' limited IT literacy. Teachers also reported some non-technical constraints, such as difficult to assist students individually. Students did not turn in assignment. Student teachers difficult to carry out. Some students never join online sessions. Parents complained about students' insufficient mastery of the subject, insufficient involvement of the students, student passiveness due to boredom. Online teaching has its advantages as well as its disadvantages. As reported by the teachers, the pluses of online teaching include technologies make teaching and learning neat and interesting, more sufficient for presentation and effective in motivating students, more creativity on the part of both teachers and students. Students become better literate in technologies. Learning could take place almost anytime and anywhere, making students more autonomous. Breakout rooms conducted during online sessions to provide assistance to individual students facing difficulties. One teacher reported that he conducted home visit to teach individual students. Teachers developed additional materials that could be posted in accessible platforms, such as in WhatsApp groups and SMS. Teachers consulted with techie colleagues to handle technological problems. In conclusion, teachers considered the following when planning, implementing, and assessing their students in an online format. As regards delivery format, they used synchronous, asynchronous, or a mix of the two, depending on the availability of students' internet connection and also devices. Regarding the learning platform, they tended to use combination of video conference, messenger apps, and learning management system. As to the organizational structure, a combination of self-study materials, interactive activities with peers, and individual practices seems very common. In line with modes of interaction types, utilization of different modes of communication with support from different technology tools, allowing interaction between learner and content, learner and technology, learner and learner, and learner and teacher. As regards the assessments, they tend to administer performance assessment utilizing a pre-designed rubric. That's all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your kind attention.